There is a moment every woman remembers. She doesn't usually say it out loud, but she knows exactly what it felt like. Not the moment he wanted her. Not the compliment, not the chemistry, not the late-night conversation that felt like it meant something. The moment she understood, quietly and without ceremony, that she had been replaced in his mind. No drama, no explanation, no real ending. She was interesting, she was available, she was, by most measures, remarkable, and somehow, she was completely forgettable. Nobody prepares you for that particular sting, because the truth underneath it is uncomfortable in a way that takes a while to sit with. Being impressive does not make you unforgettable. If anything, the harder you work to be remarkable, the more you give, the more you share, the more you show up, the faster you dissolve into the background of his emotional memory. Men don't remember the woman who performed best. They remember the woman who changed something inside them. The one who left a residue they couldn't quite name. The silent mistake that makes a woman forgettable isn't about her beauty or her intelligence or her effort. It's overexposure. It's the compulsion to demonstrate value before anyone has asked for it. And most women do it without realizing. They enter conversations emotionally accelerated, they answer within seconds, they fill every pause as though silence were something dangerous. They volunteer their stories, their fears, their warmth, their full attention. What feels like charisma to them reads as cognitive completion to him. And the mind does not return to what it has already fully processed. There's a psychological principle called the Zeigarnik effect, the discovery that people remember incomplete experiences far more vividly than completed ones. An unfinished story lingers. A closed loop disappears. When you hand someone your entire emotional blueprint in the first few interactions, you remove the mental tension that would have kept you present in his thoughts. There's no open file, no unresolved question. You get categorized, understood, filed away. And categorization is where fascination goes to die. Most women aren't forgotten because they're inadequate. They're forgotten because they're predictable. Predictability creates a certain kind of safety. But safety without depth does not create imprint. When you reply within seconds every time, you signal availability without any sense of demand. When you agree too readily, you eliminate contrast. When you laugh at everything, you flatten your own emotional range. You believe you're building connection. What you're actually doing is eliminating friction. And friction, subtle, controlled, elegant friction, is what creates psychological grip. This is where conditioning quietly works against you. From early on, women are rewarded for being agreeable. Easy to talk to, easy to like, easy to be around. The praise comes early and consistently, but easy is also abundant. And the human brain does not assign high value to what feels abundant. This is behavioral economics, not cynicism. Sartre wrote that desire requires distance, that longing needs separation to survive. Without space, there is no pull. Without pull, there is no pursuit. Without pursuit, the mind simply moves on. Think about the last time you were genuinely, almost unsettlingly intrigued by someone. It wasn't because they flooded you with information about themselves. It was because something about them remained just slightly out of reach. Not cold, not rude, just self-contained. There was a rhythm to them. They didn't rush to be known. They allowed you to discover, and discovery felt like a privilege. Now compare that to the woman who is emotionally loud, not in volume, but in urgency. She triple texts to clarify something before being misunderstood. She volunteers a past trauma as a bonding gesture before anyone has earned it. She over-explains her early departure so no one draws the wrong conclusion. She believes that transparency equals intimacy. But premature transparency often signals anxiety rather than depth. What it communicates, underneath all the openness, is, please see all of me immediately so I can feel secure. And that urgency registers. Men are acutely attuned to emotional pacing, not because they're more evolved, but because attraction for them is closely tied to challenge and novelty. When everything is instantly accessible, dopamine drops. The pursuit circuitry quiets. Anticipation activates reward centers far more powerfully than possession ever does. If there is nothing left to anticipate, the experience flattens. And here's the contradiction that most women resist. Being unforgettable requires restraint, not emotional suppression, not performance, Restraint, the considered decision not to exhaust your entire personality in one sitting. The confidence to let silence stretch without rushing to repair it. The elegance of leaving a sentence just slightly unfinished. Look at your own patterns honestly. When he pauses before responding, do you fill the gap? When he takes a few hours to reply, do you compensate by increasing warmth? When a conversation slows, do you escalate energy to revive it? These adjustments seem small, harmless, even kind. But cumulatively, they create a pattern he reads without realizing he's reading it. You are chasing equilibrium. And chasing, no matter how subtle, dilutes power. The woman who is remembered doesn't recalibrate herself to match his fluctuations. She maintains her own internal rhythm. She doesn't speed up when he slows down. She doesn't slow down out of fear of losing him. She moves at her own pace. And rhythm, genuine rhythm, is seductive because it signals autonomy. When people try to describe someone they found magnetic, they reach for words like presence, composure, grounded. Rarely do they say she talked the most or shared the most. Presence isn't volume. It's containment. It's the sensation that there is considerably more beneath the surface than what is immediately visible, and that the surface itself is just the beginning. Marcus Aurelius wrote about self-governance, the ability to remain internally steady while everything around you moves. In modern terms, this is nervous system regulation. When you fidget, overtalk, laugh a beat too quickly, constantly reach for your phone mid-conversation, you communicate inner agitation before you've said a single word. It doesn't matter what you're wearing. Energy precedes aesthetics, and agitation, however subtle, reads as insecurity. The harder truth is this. Men don't remember women who feel interchangeable. And interchangeability is built through behavioral commonality. If you respond like everyone else, reassure like everyone else, react like everyone else, your presence blends into the collective texture of his experience. What stands out is contrast. The woman who pauses before answering. The woman who doesn't overreact. The woman who listens fully before she speaks. The woman who can end a conversation first, calmly, without panic, without theatrical exit. Ending first is genuinely powerful. Not abruptly, not performatively, but with awareness of rhythm. Most people overstay. They drain an interaction past its natural peak, pushing conversation until it loses shape and energy turns stale. But when you leave while something still feels elevated, you create continuation in his mind. He replays it. He anticipates the next. He wonders. And wondering is where memorability begins. You do not become unforgettable by increasing output. You become unforgettable by controlling exposure, by allowing small, intentional gaps, by trusting that you do not need to prove your depth immediately. That depth, offered gradually, lands with far more weight than depth offered all at once. The silent mistake was never that you were too much. It was that you gave too much, too fast. You removed the very psychological mechanisms that create imprint. We've been told memorability comes from amplification. Be more. Show more. Do more. Social media has built an entire architecture around that logic. Dating advice packages it as, show your best self. But the paradox is this. Excess visibility reduces perceived rarity. The brain doesn't cling to what feels abundant. It fixates on what feels distinct, contained, slightly out of reach. Pascal observed that almost all of humanity's problems stem from our inability to sit quietly alone with ourselves. Most people genuinely cannot tolerate silence, ambiguity, or stillness. And so they fill space. They over-explain. They rush to demonstrate how lovable they are. But what is constantly explained rarely feels mysterious, and what lacks mystery rarely leaves an imprint worth returning to. The woman who becomes unforgettable doesn't compete for cognitive space. She occupies it differently. She regulates herself. She doesn't leak urgency. She doesn't broadcast her full emotional map within the first encounter. There is structure to her presence. There is rhythm to how she responds. There is an anchored calm that cuts through a world addicted to noise, and that contrast is felt before it's understood. Calm is disruptive. Not loud calm. Not performative serenity. Real calm. The kind that doesn't rush to respond, doesn't scramble to impress, doesn't vibrate with subtle desperation beneath polished words. In a culture where urgency has become the default frequency, the woman who lowers hers becomes instantly distinct. Most people misread attraction as stimulation. More excitement, more sparks, more energy. But what actually creates imprint is contrast. When a man moves through a world of reactive, emotionally accelerated interactions, and then encounters a woman who is regulated, measured, almost unbothered, his nervous system registers the difference before his mind articulates it. This is co-regulation. Human beings subconsciously sync to the strongest emotional signal in the room. If you are anxious, he absorbs it. If you're grounded, he feels that too. And grounded energy is rarer than beauty. Far rarer. Watch a woman who understands this. She enters without scanning the room for validation. Her pace is unhurried. She isn't clutching her phone. She doesn't speak immediately to fill space. When asked something, she pauses, not because she's calculating, but because she's present. That pause alone communicates something quietly radical. I am not afraid of silence. Most people are. Visibly, unconsciously, constantly. Stillness is power because it implies self-containment. It says without a word, I am not here trying to extract anything from this moment. And a woman who isn't extracting, not fishing for reassurance, not engineering reaction, becomes psychologically expensive. Think about how luxury operates. Space, restraint, controlled pacing. High-end experiences are never frantic. They are structured, intentional, deliberate. When your movements are unhurried, your tone steady, your eye contact sustained without aggression, you create weight. Weight creates gravity. Gravity pulls. The unforgettable woman doesn't react to his emotional fluctuations. If he becomes slightly distant, she doesn't overcompensate. If he delays, she doesn't accelerate warmth to bridge the gap. She maintains her own internal continuity. That consistency signals something he may not consciously name, but will viscerally feel: stability. And stability is deeply attractive because it reduces unpredictability without eliminating mystery, which is its own kind of paradox, but a real one. Calm doesn't mean boring, it means controlled. And control over oneself has always been associated with high social value. Marcus Aurelius called it the highest form of strength, mastery over reaction. In the context of early attraction, that translates into something simple but genuinely rare. You don't let his fluctuations set your rhythm. Your rhythm is yours. Anticipation fuels desire. Dopamine spikes not at reward, but at the possibility of reward. When your presence is guaranteed, his brain doesn't need to work toward re-experiencing it. But when there is gentle unpredictability, not games, not manufactured distance, just natural pacing rooted in your own actual life, your own priorities, your own grounded state, you introduce space for imagination. And imagination is where obsession is born. Think about airports. The person who commands quiet attention isn't usually the loudest traveler. It's the woman walking unhurried, entirely immersed in her own world, not scanning to see who's watching. She assumes she belongs. That assumption, internal, unconditional, is powerful because belonging that doesn't require confirmation cannot be revoked. Many women fear that if they don't continuously stimulate an interaction, interest will fade. But interest that depends on constant stimulation is shallow by design. Depth is built in stillness, in pauses, in the intentional absence of overexposure. The most composed women don't overshare. They answer what's asked. They listen fully, they hold their glass loosely, they sit back rather than leaning forward too eagerly. Their body language says, I am comfortable here. And comfort signals status, because the person most at ease in any room is almost always the one least afraid of losing it. Rarity, though, is the final layer, and it's widely misunderstood. Most women think standing out means being more expressive, more stylish, more magnetic. But what truly differentiates is restraint paired with discernment. The unforgettable woman isn't rare because she's extreme or dramatically different. She's rare because she doesn't distribute herself widely, because she understands quietly that not everyone deserves access to her depth. The effort justification principle explains why. The more someone invests time, thought, emotional energy, the more valuable the outcome becomes in their own perception. If your attention is freely given, instantly available, emotionally unfiltered, no investment is required to access you. And without investment, there is no psychological ownership. Without ownership, there is no comparison later. Men don't compare every woman they encounter. They compare the ones who required something real to reach. This is why oversharing is so quietly damaging. When you reveal your full emotional landscape too early, you remove layers that could have unfolded with time. Layers aren't deception, They're the natural architecture of intimacy. The woman who is unforgettable understands timing. She knows that closeness is progressive, that it's earned through consistency and mutual pacing, not performed through early disclosure. Think about conversations specifically. Most people try to prove themselves in it. They narrate stories in full detail, list accomplishments, fill every silence with additional data. But memorability doesn't come from data. It comes from emotional imprint. An emotional imprint often lives in what was almost said, a slight smile that ends before explanation, a story that trails off with intention, a topic shifted before full disclosure. These micro-moments create cognitive hooks. His mind returns to them later, attempting to resolve what felt incomplete. And in that return, you remain present. There is also the power of the exit. Most interactions decay because people overstay them. They push past the natural peak of an exchange until the energy turns flat. The unforgettable woman leaves slightly before saturation. Not abruptly, not theatrically. She simply senses the rhythm of an interaction, recognizes its height, and allows it to close while still charged. Closure at the peak preserves impact. Lingering past it dilutes it. The brain encodes final impressions powerfully, and if the final impression is curiosity, warmth, and a trace of unfinished energy, that is what loops. Looping is memorability. The unforgettable woman also doesn't compete. She doesn't fight for dominance in a room. She doesn't escalate flirtation when another woman enters the dynamic. Competition signals scarcity, the belief that attention is a limited resource you must battle for. True rarity doesn't compete. It selects. When you behave as though you are evaluating rather than auditioning, everything shifts. Your questions become deliberate. Your listening becomes selective. Your reactions become measured. He senses that you are not hoping to be chosen. You are observing whether he qualifies. That inversion creates gravity. Belonging, at its core, is an internal decision. The woman who waits for a room to validate her never fully relaxes into it. She adjusts, monitors, self-corrects in real time. But the woman who has already decided she belongs doesn't need to signal it. She engages when she chooses. She disengages when she chooses. That autonomy becomes distinct. Distinct becomes rare. And rare, with enough time, becomes irreplaceable. When a man later meets a woman who is louder, more immediately available, more eager, something will feel different. Not wrong, just familiar. And familiarity without depth rarely competes with a remembered contrast. He may not articulate it, he may not consciously analyze it, but his nervous system will notice the absence of that pause, that measured presence, that quiet sense of a woman who had somewhere else to be. You cannot be replicated when your behavior is not common. The tragedy is that so many women dilute themselves trying to be universally appealing. But universal appeal produces uniformity. Uniformity produces interchangeability. And interchangeability is forgettable by definition. She curates exposure without manipulation. She regulates without suppression. She engages without chasing. Calm paired with rarity creates imprint. Not because she performed it, but because she inhabited it. Because in the end, he won't remember the woman who tried the hardest. He'll remember the one who felt different without effort. The one who didn't rush to secure him. The one who moved at her own pace and left before she was consumed. Being unforgettable was never about being louder. It was about being less accessible than average, in a world built on emotional overexposure. And once that lands, truly lands, the question changes. You stop asking how to be remembered. You start asking who deserves access to your presence. That shift, quiet as it is, makes you unforgettable before you've said a single word.